start at the very beginning.
No, you haven't clicked on the wrong video. That is in fact Walt Disney's classic, The Sound of Music. But what if I told you that the very first person to play Spider-Man on the big screen was this guy, Frederick Von Trapp, also known as the actor Nicholas Hammond. We have never gotten an official action figure of Hammond in the Spidey suit, but that's about to change, as I'm going to take you through how I turned this into this, a custom 1970s Spider-Man, and in the process, filled in one of the biggest gaps in my Spidey collection.
Carbon scoring here. Looks like you boys have seen a lot of action.
Hey y'all, and welcome back to Carbon Scoring, the best place for comics history and action figures. Over the past year, we've taken a chronological look at Spidey's history through the lens of the creators who brought these stories to life. But the 70s were a fertile time for Spider-Man to first appear in live action. Sure, Spidey made his TV debut in animated form in the beloved 1967 cartoon, but Marvel hadn't had a live-action portrayal since the 1940s Captain America serial. Spidey's first ever live-action appearance actually came on The Electric Company, a public broadcasting educational show beginning in 1974. It was like a comic book come to life, with our hero appearing in between comic panels on the screen. Spidey was played by puppeteer and dancer Danny Seagren, who never spoke during the spots. His thoughts expressed in classic word balloons, thus encouraging the young viewers to read. A total of 29 shorts were produced over 3 years, from 1974 to 1977, with popular actor Morgan Freeman providing narration for several of the first episodes. Not only did this allow us to see a real-life Spidey for the first time, but it left us with an unforgettable theme song. Meanwhile, kids in Japan were treated to their own version of the webhead, with 1978's TV series featuring a young motorcycle racer who stumbles upon a crashed UFO. Upon investigating the scene, he is granted spider powers after a blood transfusion from the last remaining warrior from Planet Spider. He uses these gifts to battle the evil Iron Cross army, all with the help of a special bracelet, which can activate his Spider Protector costume, shoot web lines, and also control his UFO spaceship, Marvelar, which then transforms into the giant battle robot, Leopardon. So while we're stuck watching a speechless Spidey on public television, the kids in Japan not only get an awesome action hero, they get giant robots to boot. But relief was on the horizon, because we were about to get our very own real Spider-Man show. CBS had success with superheroes on television with The Incredible Hulk and Wonder Woman starring Linda Carter. Just like the Hulk, Spidey premiered as a 2-hour movie, then continued as a mid-season replacement show. The pilot movie premiered on September 14th, 1977, and was an instant hit, proving to be CBS's highest-rated program for the year, earning a 17.8 rating. For context, the highest-rated show in 2020 was Sunday Night Football, with only a 4.7 rating. The 2-hour pilot was then released in theaters overseas and was an international success. Despite all of this, the pilot movie didn't perform as well as CBS had hoped in the lucrative 18 to 49 demographic, so they only ordered 5 more episodes for the first season. Now, those did well enough that CBS greenlighted a second season of 7 more episodes, but their commitment to the show was wavering, and afraid of being known as the comic book network, they pulled the plug at the end of season 2. There's plenty of blame to go around for the lack of success of the Spider-Man TV show. It's easy to point at the special effects as the culprit, but honestly, they're pretty good for the time, and the unique use of first-person camera work really brought the action into your living room. Blame has also been placed on the lack of familiar villains from the comics. Spidey faced off against the likes of mind-controlling professors, members of religious cults, and petty thieves, as opposed to the likes of the Green Goblin or Electro. But given the budgetary restraints, I think this was actually a solid choice. Web swinging scenes, like the one seen here, were shot from multiple angles so that they could be used over and over again to save a little money. For me, the real reason for the show's failure was its inability to find a consistent voice. Cast members changed episode to episode. For example, Aunt May only appeared twice and was played by a different actress each time. And they never really could settle on the tone for the series. While the Incredible Hulk show was very dark and haunting, and Batman's 1966 series took camp to a whole new level, Spidey was not really sure how seriously to take itself. The producers tried to make the show more mature in its second season, but in the process, took all the fun out of it. Even Stan Lee disapproved, saying, quote, "They left out the humor. They left out the human interest and personality and playing up characterizations and personal problems," end quote. Look, man, if Stan Lee doesn't like your Spider-Man show, you got some real issues. But despite becoming a footnote in Spidey's overall history, I have always wanted an action figure version of Nicholas Hammond in the Spidey suit. In fact, I've mentioned that in several of my other Spidey history videos. That's where my friend Martin Dallard comes in. Longtime viewers may remember Martin as the creator of this incredible custom Spider Slayer. He reached out to me to tell me about Christopher King's Etsy site, Kenner by King. Chris is known for his fantastic custom 3 3/4 inch card backs from properties as diverse as Star Wars, Batman, Flash Gordon, and RoboCop. If there was a cool property in the 70s or 80s, he's made a card for it. But he hasn't stopped there. Chris also produces 3D printed versions of Lou Ferrigno as the Hulk and Linda Carter as Wonder Woman, both coming with a custom card back. But for me, it's all about this Spidey figure, a perfect reproduction of the 1970s Spider-Man. The figures come in their gray molded plastic, and I'll be the first to admit, I have no experience painting action figures. But that wasn't going to stop me. I'd waited far too long for a Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man. Chris sent me the figures, I watched a couple of YouTube videos on painting miniatures, and away I went. I mean, how hard could it be, right? Well, my first try turned out like this. Yeah, this is actually going to be a little bit tougher than I thought. Turns out, I had a lot to learn about painting miniatures. But I'm no dummy. I knew I was going to struggle right out of the gate, so I had ordered 3 figures from Chris, 2 in the smaller 3 3/4 inch scale, and a larger 6 inch figure intended for my Spidey display. The lessons that I learned on this abomination led to this. For my second attempt, I used the 6 inch figure. It was far easier to work with being double the size, and I'm really happy how it turned out. The bright colors pop, and the details of the sculpt are still visible. But you've got to be wondering, how did I do it? How did I go from painting something a kindergartner would be ashamed of to a proud piece of my collection? Well, luckily, I saved that other 3 3/4 inch figure, and I'm going to take you step by step through the process. So here again is the smaller version of the figure. It has all of the detail, just sculpted down to classic Kenner size. The first thing you have to do is thoroughly wash the figure. These printed plastic materials can have oils on them, and if you don't get them clean, your paint won't apply evenly. A simple dishwashing soap works fine. Next comes priming. One of the best tricks I learned watching videos was to create this simple stand. It allows you to hold it and work all angles without actually touching the figure. A little double-sided tape, and you're ready to go. Perhaps the biggest mistake I made with the first figure was using a dark primer. This bled through and really muted the colors on that model. Now, I'm using a much lighter colored primer and just gently dusting the figure from every angle. You want it even, but you don't want to apply it too thick. This is going to allow your paints to stick to the figure. And there we go. We'll let it dry, and it's time to paint. Thankfully, one of my local comic shops has a great selection of model paints. I'm not planning on making a career out of this, so I just got the colors that I needed for Spidey. I picked up a selection of brushes in different sizes and styles, And while every video I watched encouraged you to use a wet palette for your paints, this was such a small project, I just grabbed a Tupperware lid for a palette. Now it's time to paint. Because the spider on the chest and the black around Spidey's eyes are raised on the sculpt, I attempted to paint those first to see if I could get that detail finished out before I went with the background. It didn't really work, and I would have to clean that up as I went along. But then I laid down a first coat of red along all of those parts of the costume. First coat of red is complete. Time to break out the blue. Same thing here, just laying down a base coat of color. It's interesting how different pigments behave very differently. The red is really thin and requires multiple coats, while the blue is much thicker straight out of the bottle. Hey, Spidey's got on pants. Here's where we stand after our first coat of paint. Still a long way to go. After a couple of more coats of red and blue, it was time to start adding some of the silver metallic highlights to the eyes and to the belt. This was a really painstaking process and one that required multiple revisions to get right. At this point, Spidey's starting to look fairly recognizable, so I began using finer and finer brushes for the detail work. After multiple coats and corrections, the primary painting has been completed. Now, for those incredibly fine details that I just don't have the skill to do with a brush, I grab a fine point Sharpie and try to finish up around the eyes and the spider symbol. Once you're satisfied with your figure, it's time to finish it up with a clear gloss coating. This not only makes your figure shiny and pop, it helps to protect and preserve all the hard work that you've put into the painting. Just dust it again, making sure that you get an even coating across every single angle. And voila! A 3 3/4 inch 1970s Spider-Man. It was much harder to get the detail work correct at this scale, but overall, I'm pretty pleased with the result. But we're not quite finished. Remember, Chris makes all those great custom vintage cards, and you knew he would go all out for Spider-Man, including an offer for mail-away web shooters with 2 proofs of purchase and vintage Kenner details. So here is our 3 3/4 inch Spidey figure, mint in package, straight out of 1978, with his 6-inch cousin by his side. I can't say enough about the detail, accuracy, and care that went into producing these miniature masterpieces. If you're interested in Chris's other work, I've included a link to his site in the description. But for now, I am so excited to have found the missing link in my Spidey collection. If you enjoyed this video, give us a like, and go ahead and subscribe so you won't miss any of the amazing things we have coming up from Carbon Scoring.